Welcome to Homegrown Tales, a live storytelling event held at Brews, 2 Pinot Spring in Eureka Springs. The following was recorded June 5th, 2024. And now here's Zeek Taylor to introduce the program.
Hello, everyone. My co-producer Sandra and I welcome you. We're delighted to share the stage tonight with DZ Rife and Brews' own John Rankine.
I want to remind you that all the stories that you'll hear tonight are true stories written and lived by the people who will be telling them to you tonight. And we're thrilled that tonight's musician is a multi-genre melting pot of a musician, Shane Causey, who, in his words, fits in where he gets in, pulling from his hodgepodge pack of tunes. From folk to funk, rocking till the grass turns blue, he plays it all from the heart. Please welcome a crowd favorite here at Brews, the multi-talented Shane Causey.
It's a poor man's Cadillac. That gets me tuition. On Saturday, he's the finest place. And somebody else's shoe says something is case. Always looking up to me, highway, rolling on.
Zeek Taylor is a recipient of the Arkansas Governor's Arts Award for Lifetime Achievement. Best known as a visual artist, he is also a storyteller and writer. He's performed on the NPR show Tales from the South. A StoryCorps interview with Zeek is on file in the Library of Congress, and a segment of the interview aired on NPR's Morning Edition. He's the author of 4 books that include Chimps Having Fun and Out of the Delta, the anthology. Zeek has also done film work and has appeared in commercials, documentaries, a short film, and a full-length feature film. He and his partner were recently interviewed, and this is so exciting, by a news crew from the ABC network for a primetime special titled Pride Across America. The program will air on June 30th. Here's Zeek.
Let's hear it again for Shane. And if you want to hear more of Shane, he hosts open mic every Thursday night right here in Brews. Walking in Memphis, but not alone. The school I attended in the early 70s, the Memphis College of Art, was in a part of the city known as Midtown. I rented an apartment near Overton's Park where the school was located, and I was within walking distance to the campus. A few blocks to the south, and also within walking distance, was Overton Square, an entertainment district with trendy restaurants, bars, and galleries. I also could walk to the grocery store and to the laundromat. Midtown was in an older part of the city and only minutes away from downtown and the Mississippi River. The area was frequented by tourists who could be seen strolling the streets at all times of the day and night. Directly across the street from my apartment, there was a dairy distribution center and the abandoned Jewish community center. A few blocks to the west was a neighborhood filled with shotgun-style homes. The small houses were occupied by the disadvantaged poor. In contrast, just a few blocks to the north were well-maintained, older, large mansions that sat on beautifully landscaped lawns. I loved my neighborhood. Most of the time I was able to leave my 1959 Chevy Impala parked behind my apartment and go places on foot. I could walk to the 7-Eleven, Purdy's drugstore, and Burkle's bakery. I often walked alone late at night after working on projects at school, and many times I did the walk while alone. All that changed when several young men reported being raped while walking at night in Midtown. Local newspapers dubbed the rapist the Midtown molester. I was afraid. I thought, this must be how women feel with the constant threat of being assaulted. It made me sad that anyone, man or woman, should have to walk in fear. My male friends and I became very cautious and only ventured out in pairs or groups while the Midtown molester was on the prowl. All this happened around the time I had met my partner, Dick. He was very protective of me, and he worried about my safety. He made an effort to spend more time with me. One evening, several weeks after the first reported attack by the rapist, Dick and I were in the apartment watching the movie Patton on my television when we heard the loud whirling blades of a helicopter. It was flying low and close to the top of the apartment building. Searchlights flooded the living room windows. The invasive noise and the flashing lights continued for several minutes. Earlier that evening, the molester had attacked a young man in the park, blindfolded and bound him, put him in the trunk of his car, and drove him to an apartment where he was raped. The young man was a sailor from nearby Millington, a naval base located north of the city. Despite this terrifying situation, the victim kept his wits, and he was able to count and estimate the distance the vehicle traveled between the site of the abduction and the molester's apartment. The young sailor also memorized the direction the car had turned at each intersection. Following the assault, the rapist put the victim back into his car truck, took him somewhere, and dumped him. The sailor contacted the police, and they returned to the site of the abduction with him. By counting and remembering each turn the rapist had made while the sailor was in the trunk, he retraced the drive and led the authorities to the abductor's apartment. The helicopter that had flown over my apartment complex was a lookout in case the rapist tried to escape on foot. Later that night, and after the helicopter stopped circling, it was reported on the news that the authorities had arrested the Midtown molester. He had been living in a nearby garage apartment, and he too had been watching Patton when the police entered his apartment. He was identified as a teacher at a local boys' school. The Midtown molester was tried and sentenced to prison. Following the arrest, all of the guys in my apartment complex breathed a sigh of relief. We felt safer, not safe, but safer. I don't live in fear, but since that time, I have been cautious, often look over my shoulder, especially when I'm walking and when it's dark. Thank you. And our next reader tonight is going to be Brews' own John. John Rankine is an award-winning multimedia artist who originally hails from Toronto, Canada, and who has made Eureka Springs home for the past 28 years. He was a co-founder, photojournalist, and columnist for the Lovely County Citizen, a weekly newspaper started in December of 1999. Working in a variety of creative mediums, Rankine was the recipient of the Individual Fellowship Award in 2011 and received an Artist 360 grant in 2017. John's writing and photography have appeared in Emerge magazine, and he has been a frequent guest storyteller at Homegrown Tales. John will be this month's featured guest writer for the next Poet Luck at the Writers' Colony at Dairy Hollow, Thursday, June the 20th. Y'all to go see him read again. Here's my friend John Rankine.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. Great crowd. Brussels sprouts. In my 20s, I had ambitions of being an actor, and because I could carry a tune and had taken some tap and jazz dance classes, I was fortunate to be cast in quite a few musicals, playing Brad Majors in The Rocky Horror Show, Jesus in Godspell, and Linus in Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. So I was very excited when I was cast as a major character in a new Canadian play, Brussels Sprouts, in 1982. It became a first for many things. My first lead in my first dramatic play, my first time learning and memorizing pages and pages of dialogue, and my first and only time, I was naked on stage. Brussels Sprouts is a 3-character play. My character, Ernie, was a complex yet simple and innocent gay man, often childlike for the affection of his complex bisexual best friend, Murray. Murray was also in love with Bernice, a complex heterosexual woman who had strong feelings for both Ernie and Murray. This ménage à trois was the centerpiece for the drama and often comedy that took place over the course of this 2-act play. The play was directed by Mel Tuck, a beloved drama teacher at Toronto's Ryerson University, and was Svengali to many of his students, including his 2 recent graduates and my 2 co-stars, Garfield Andrews and Athena Voyatis. At the time, I was openly gay to friends, but still in the closet when it came to family and the theater, although I don't think I was fooling anyone. Garth was a very handsome straight man who had no trouble with any of our intimate scenes. Athena was a dark-haired beauty from Greek parents who was a very good actor. Having little formal training and even less dramatic experience, I did feel intimidated during those first few days of rehearsal, but there was an immediate chemistry between all 3 of us. Near the end of the play, there was a lot of well-choreographed bed hopping, with all of us on stage in various stages of undress. All through the rehearsal process, we kept our clothes on until what we called the undress rehearsal, the night before we opened. The play was in a 2nd-story empty loft on Toronto's main Yonge Street strip in the heart of downtown that seated maybe 100 people. This would be considered off Broadway. The set was simple, a bohemian apartment with a king-size bed directly placed in the middle of the stage. We used the large floor-to-ceiling undraped windows that looked out onto the street as the backdrop for its urban setting. It was a short run, I think 10 nights, and we managed to fill most of the seats. Opening night went well, filled with friends and family. Closing night was October 31st. And in hindsight, we should have been prepared that something strange might occur that evening. The play was directly across the street from the St. Charles Tavern, a notorious gay bar in its day that had a Halloween tradition of drag queens parading to and fro from another notorious gay bar in its day, the Parkside Tavern, a half a block away. The event always attracted locals and curious tourists who came out to gawk at the pageantry. So that night, in the middle of the play, glancing down onto the street, I noticed a large gathering of people directly below. All 3 of us were aware that something was happening, but continued on, concentrating on our lines and the play. Near the end of the play, I have a scene where I'm standing in nothing but my underwear, looking out from our floor-to-ceiling windows. Below was a huge mob of people staring right up at me. It was soon after that we heard a big commotion coming from the back of the theater. Pushing through our back entrance doors and charging in were 8 cops in uniform. I'm not sure who was stunned the most, me, my castmates, the audience, or the cops themselves. It was so surreal, and I honestly can't remember what happened next. The play obviously stopped, and I think the cops knew right away this was not the wild orgy they so rambunctiously wanted to bust. Word on the street was that a live sex show was being performed upstairs. With our stage lighting, it looked like a giant television screen from the street. When things finally settled down and the adrenaline subsided, I think we finished the play. What no one had noticed was that the press had quietly snuck in, waiting patiently in the back for the action to begin. Later that night on the 11 o'clock news was footage of the 8-member SWAT team charging up the stairs, along with the story of what happened. We really could not have had better publicity, and there were talks of an extended run due to the number of calls our box office received the next day. But alas, with such short notice and previous commitments by some, our closing night ended on Halloween. It also pretty much ended my acting career. Brussels sprouts did open the door to get into auditions, but after struggling for more than a year without even a callback, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. My fragile little self could not handle the rejection anymore. It's a tough business to be in, and even though I loved being on stage, I made the promise to myself and call it quits. Many of my acting friends, including Garfield and Athena, made a go of it, and although not household names, managed to make a living at it. It was shortly after calling it quits that I moved to Key West, Florida, sight unseen, to pursue the next chapter in my life, and perhaps another story. Thank you, guys.
Why was it called Brussels sprouts?
It was because it was set in Brussels. Nobody would know that, even if it was never even on the program.
I was so curious.
Yeah.
Let's hear it again for John. That was a great story. Our next storyteller is my co-producer and friend, Sandra Spotts. Sandra has written for several Central Arkansas publications and made 12 appearances telling her original stories on the internationally broadcast radio show Tales from the South. Sandra has a background in fine arts that began with work as a fiber artist. She has been an art teacher and has worked as a professional designer. For the past several years, she has called Eureka Springs home, where she continues her art career as an abstract expressionist painter. Here is my friend Sandra.
This is called Open Wide. I really needed the job. After it was offered, my plan to return to the university went into motion. I gave notice to the insurance company where I worked, rented a room near campus, and started collecting boxes to pack my few belongings. I had traveled light since my dad helped me move to Little Rock from the Houston apartment I had shared with my husband of 2 years. I had worked and saved, realizing my best path was to get my degree. Part-time dental assistant wanted, read the newspaper ad. Will train. I made the trip, interviewed with the young dentist, and was soon notified the position was mine. My future was set until a few days before my intended move, when I received a call from the dentist's receptionist. They were very sorry, but doctor decided to change the position to full-time, and he had already hired someone to fill it. The hire had walked in, pleaded for a full-time job, which she was granted. He wouldn't need me. My heart sank. It was now too close to the start of the semester to find a new job. My plan was waylaid. I received another call from the receptionist after a few days. My brother-in-law, without my knowledge, had contacted the dentist, gone to bat for me, told him how he had derailed my plans, that I was responsible, reliable, and a hard worker. And maybe the best hiring policy was to avoid promising and then withdrawing a job. Doctor decided that anyone who wanted a job that badly and who had such solid family support should have a job. He hired both of us. I was to be the rover, which was the secondary assistant, and the full-time person was to be his chairside assistant. In those days, I was thin and pale, really thin, with long red hair and a quiet demeanor. I worked hard at learning the requirements of the position, while the primary assistant, Jan, an exotic brunette with fiery eyes, spent much time sitting with her head in her hands, in a funk, complaining about her recent quick marriage and launch into the full-time workforce. On this particular Friday afternoon, doctor decided to change the scheduled treatment for a high school girl. Rather than do the planned simple fillings, he decided to extract her 4 wisdom teeth. So without contacting her mother, he proceeded to extract all 4, including the impacted one. Things did not go well. The stubborn, impacted tooth would not yield a root, which broke off, requiring much more extensive work. Doctor alternately threw curses and dental instruments. I stayed close to the room, but far away to duck. There was a thud. The trauma of the unpleasant sight caused Jan to faint and hit the floor. Then there was another thud. Doctor, who was not a huge man, had jumped up, grabbed the sink suspended on the wall behind the patient chair, and ripped it off the wall and away from the plumbing pipes, throwing it in the corner to rest. The patient remained in a heavily oblivious state, rendered by the nitrous oxide being pumped into her nostrils. Doctor yelled for me to take over chairside while the receptionist rushed in and helped Jan out of the room. While I did not love the gory sight, I have always had the ability to stay focused, but at the same time remove myself mentally from an unpleasant situation. I clicked into chairside assistant mode and remained there for the rest of my time of working in the dental office. Jan had been demoted. Doctor finally calmed down, extracted the stubborn root, and completed the finish work required to send the patient to wait for her mom to pick her up. When the time came, the irate woman blasted through the door into the treatment room, screaming at the doctor. Do you realize tomorrow is her prom night? You have spoiled the most important night of her life. You find those damn teeth and you put them back in her head. With that, she grabbed her daughter's wrist and flew out of the office screaming all the way. Instruments were picked up, towels were thrown on the soaked carpet, and a plumber was called. Jan was sent home to recover from fainting. Doctor later stuck his head in the doorway, made an apology to me, and added, "You look so frail that I didn't think you'd be the strong one. Good work." I secretly wondered if the poor girl's prom dress would coordinate well with black and blue. Eventually, Jan's star faded, and Doctor realized she was not adding to the value of the office, and she was let go. After a year in the dental office, my physician told me on a visit, I probably held the record for having stayed the longest in that office. And then I realized serving beer and pizza was a much more fun and healthy way to cover my college expenses. And I had hoped that Doctor learned at least two things: anger management, and to never underestimate the inner strength of a frail redhead with a plan.
Earlier, Sandra mentioned that Dick and I had been interviewed by ABC News, and the interview would air June 30th. Yesterday, the reporter who interviewed us said the network had decided to air the interview in two versions, one 3 minutes long and another that will be 6 minutes long. It will air on ABC Noon Show, on ABC News Live, the Pride Special, and again on Hulu. And here is a backstory about being interviewed and some of the interviews that preceded it. It's titled, "Cameras Rolling Whether You Like It or Not." On Friday, May 9th, 2014, a judge in Little Rock issued a ruling that it was legal in the state of Arkansas for same-sex couples to wed. On the evening that ruling came down, I was attending an art reception, and Dick was home relaxing in his recliner. When I received the word that the judge had ruled that same-sex couples had the legal right to marry, I called Dick and told him. He asked, "Is this a proposal?" I said, "Hell yes it is." And he replied, "Of course I will marry you." At that time, we had been together 42 years, and that's one long engagement. That evening, the Human Rights Campaign contacted me and asked if they could send a camera crew to follow Dick and me to make a recording of the historic day, which would be the first time same-sex couples were allowed to marry in Arkansas and in the South. Knowing we had little time to employ a wedding photographer to take photos of our marriage, I said yes. I wanted a visual record of our long-awaited wedding day. Little did I know that the events of the day would receive an enormous amount of coverage. On that Saturday, Eureka Springs was the only city in the state where the courthouse was open to issue marriage license. On that day, when license could be issued for LGBTQ plus couples, it began with disappointment when the clerk refused to issue license to same-sex couples. I had the judge's printed ruling in my hands, and I told her she had to give us a license. I then told everyone that was there to get in line and go into the courthouse. It wasn't long before the clerk called the police. They came and forced us out of the courthouse. About that time, when we were leaving, the police called us back into the building to say that another clerk had stepped forward and that she would issue the licenses. We got back in line in the same order we were in before we were evicted. The clerk who had stepped up issued us a license, and we were married immediately. In the ceremony inside the courthouse, we became the first male couple to be married in the South, and that was the beginning of the media blitz around the event. We had reporters come to our home from the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many other news outlets nationwide. We even had a reporter from the largest wire service in Asia come to our home from Tokyo. And our photo and story was on the front page of the largest newspaper issued in Japan. We've been interviewed 2 times on Huffington Post Live, once with actor John Lithgow. Media coverage didn't end in the weeks following the historic event. The coverage continues to this day. During the past few months, I've been interviewed by CNN, Ravi Around the World, and again by the Washington Post. Dick politely refused to be interviewed by those organizations, and I did those 3 interviews solo. Dick does not like the spotlight. To use a well-known idiom, he has on occasion been dragged kicking and screaming to participate, and sometimes he would just not do it. Other times he would do it because he realized that when the interview was about being the first male couple to be married in the South, it was of importance. Still, he hates doing the interview. Prior to being interviewed, he is a nervous wreck. When he agrees to participate to an interview, I begin assuring him that he will be fine. Also, Valium is his friend. Still, I'm afraid that at the last minute, he will tell me that he can't do it because of my constant assurance telling him that he will do it just fine, and thanks to the common effects of the drug, when the time for the interview occurs, he is willing and ready to go, and he does fine. Recently, a reporter for ABC News contacted me and asked to interview us for a television special, Pride Across America, that is scheduled to air primetime on the network and again on Hulu. I thought that Dick would refuse, but knowing how important the interview was to me, he consented to do it. I was happy and surprised, but as I knew he would, he agonized for weeks prior to the time when the actual interview took place. He was agonizing about what to say and worried he would come across as a rambler and possibly say the wrong thing. Me, I had done countless interviews, and my only concern was what to wear. I tried on dozens of outfits and spent much time posing in front of the full-length mirror in the bathroom while wearing potential TV attire. This past Saturday, it happened. A news crew arrived and spent the next 5 hours in our home. The crew consisted of the news reporter, 2 cameramen, and the producer of the segment. Our home was turned into a recording studio. The dining room was selected as the best location for the filming. Lighting equipment was put in place, and numerous cameras were set in order to get shots from different angles. The set took more than an hour to set up for an hour, and during that time, Dick and I spent time with the reporter and the producer. Both women were very likable and easy to be with. Before long, it was like being with and talking with friends. This interaction put Dick at ease. By the time the cameras were rolling, he was fairly relaxed, and I knew he would do just fine, and he did. He told me that he actually enjoyed the day. The next day, he began agonizing about his performance, and he will continue to worry up until the time the interview airs. It is scheduled to air multiple times on ABC. And all this takes me back 10 years to the day when reporters were there, cameras were snapped, and film was being made during that historic day when we were wed. A few days later, Dick said, "If everyone doesn't know I'm gay by now, they never will." I think he was right. Dick's willingness to step way outside his box, his comfort zone, and to be interviewed is a true measure of his love for me. He does it for me. He loves me. And during this June, the month of Pride, I could not be more proud of him. Happy Pride. Thank you. And now I'm going to call Sandra back to the mic to introduce her longtime friend, DZ, who is our next reader.
Just incidentally, this next reader and I have been best pals for 51 years. Wow. Yeah, and we were adults when we met. That's the sad part. DZ Rife has been a writer her whole life. In her 60s, she started writing short and feature scripts. One short script was filmed and accepted into 7 festivals. Her feature script won 1 festival and was either a quarter or semi-finalist in 3 others. A recent short script of hers will be produced by the Northwest Arkansas Screenwriters Collective. Love for humor makes it her favorite genre. She uses double entendre in most scripts, exploiting ambiguity. A Southern girl, she knows the language of the South. It's laughter, tears, and joy. It is the music beautiful to her ears. Here's DZ.
You needed your glasses.
1971. It was my second semester at Oklahoma Baptist University. Already knew it was not the school for me. It wasn't my choice of schools, but my voice teacher of 3 years, Mr. Santos, thought it was. He was a different little man. He said oops a lot. Tourette's? Maybe. That wasn't even a word in my vocabulary at the time. But you know what? He did manage to get me a big scholarship. I was so melancholy and overdramatic at OBU, writing poetry on the chapel steps at sunset, beautiful sunsets, and sappy words. Do you love me like I am, or would you try to change me? Would you place your hand in mine and proudly love and claim me? Or would I only shame you? Oh my gosh, I wrote those words. Teenage angst. I was ready for an adventure. When it was announced that Six Size franchise was holding auditions for their spring and summer shows, I jumped. I secured my favorite accompanist who had played for me while I worked for the Oklahoma Talent Bureau. We rehearsed and went to OU with, I was told, 3,000 other people. A very long day. Finally, my turn. My name was called Miss Tipton. Now, I had sat in the auditorium all day watching each performer go on stage. The row of judges sat at a table down front, each one chain smoking a mushroom cloud over the auditorium. Now, I just really can't say what got into me, but I walked across the stage and I'm fanning my face and I'm saying, how do you expect anyone to sing in here with all this smoke? My siblings and I grew up with smokers who lit the next cigarette from the one they were just smoking. We gagged in the back seat. One of the judges said to me, Miss Tipton, you will have to get used to this if you work for us. Well, I had news for him. I hadn't, and it was 19 years. Raymond, my accompanist, came on stage and took his seat. I stood center stage, ready to sing. I started the intro. Oh, listen, sister. Judges from the table are waving their hands and going, stop, stop, stop. Oh, Miss Tipton, we don't want that part. Just start at the verse. Raymond and I started again. Fish gotta swim and birds gotta fly. More shouting, stop, stop. Miss Tipton, we have a way we like this song sung. Our pianist is coming over to play it for you. Raymond vacates the bench and the new guy sits and starts. It's faster, jazzier, and I'm feeling it. I get to finish to much applause. Now, this applause was probably my endurance of the situation rather than my talent. And then, Miss Tipton, would you please come down here? Now, I'm going to say right here, if somebody in the audience didn't know what my name was, they were just sleeping. I go down, and Mr. Blackburn, with his very bad black hairpiece, comes up to me. Miss Tipton, which park do you prefer to go to? Oh, Dallas. You know, we're opening a new park just out of St. Louis. I did, but I didn't really want to go there. I assume I got the job, and I would just wait for the call. February the 7th. And I only know this because I kept a journal for my English class. Six Flags called. They wanted to know why I didn't show up for the dance audition. I said, because no one told me about it. They went on to say that they had spoken to someone who said they'd be there. It wasn't me. I still to this day have no idea who they talked to. They hired me anyway. Thank goodness they really didn't get to see me dance. I was going to St. Louis. Not just for the summer show, they wanted me for the spring show. Rehearsal started April the 17th in St. Louis at Webster College. Now, you realize I was 500 miles away and still in college. We know that, they said. We will fly you every weekend from Oklahoma City to St. Louis. Someone will pick you up on Friday and return you on Sunday evening. I'm like, what? And we'll provide you with a place to stay. It seems I was the only non-local in the cast of 13 people. And so it begins. My first Friday rehearsal, straight from the airport to work. 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. 21 and a half hours. My new name from the choreographer was Arkansas. Arkansas, you were late on that step. Arkansas, go the other way. Arkansas, smile bigger. Let's have that Six Flags smile, like this. Arkansas, pick up the energy, etc., etc. I hated the choreographer. I wanted to say, choreographer, kiss my southern butt. I don't remember his name, but I'll never forget that face. Then on Sunday, someone would take my exhausted self back to the airport for an 8:20 flight. I'd arrive in Oklahoma City at 10:20, then drove to Shawnee and got to my dorm about 11:30. When I arrived back at the airport for my first weekend, I discovered that my car keys were missing. I called Raymond, and he came and got me. In my journal, I lamented, that was costing me $1.50 a day to park there. The next day, I went back and hired a locksmith, and he cost me $18. Of course, then I found my keys. Flying every weekend could be interesting. Returning on April the 26th, I met a very strange man as my seatmate. He told me he had ESP, so apparently our plane was going to crash. On the 27th, this same guy called me at my dorm to tell me a dream he had had. A little man walked across his cheek and told him he wanted his soul. Then on the 28th, he called to see if I wanted to go to dinner with him. Hell no! Woo! I have got to stop introducing myself to everybody and being so nice to strangers. 4 weekends of rehearsal, and then we did 2 weekend spring shows just for practice. We were ready. We wore red, white, and blue. The review was called Stars and Stripes Salute with a big American flag in the backdrop. We had an orchestra. The first time I looked down in the pit, I spotted him, this adorable oboe player. Still makes me laugh. Adorable, not sexy, oboe player named Skip. I don't know one famous oboe player, do you? Not like Kenny G famous or Louis Armstrong famous, but this oboe player captured my heart from the pit. I smiled down to the pit a lot, and Skippy, that's what I called him, had a convertible sports car. Oh, it was going to be a fun summer. When the semester was over, I moved to St. Louis and got an apartment with 3 total strangers that worked at other parts of the show. We did 31 shows a week with 1 day off. One guy in our cast would announce what number each show was. Our final tally for the summer was 434 shows. Ah, no kidding. Did I mention that my spotlight solo was the same song I had auditioned with? Can't Help Loving That Man, their style. Not to brag, but we were the highest paid employees in the park. I was rolling in dough. It is just truly amazing how far $2.25 an hour can go. It paid my living expenses and I saved for college. I was so proud. My last adventure for the summer could have gotten me murdered. Here's the story. My 1-year younger brother wanted to come to visit, usually to meet my girlfriends. He rode the bus, and I picked him up at the bus station. We always had fun together, although he's the kid that knocked out my front tooth with a baseball. After staying for a few days, I took him to the downtown bus station in St. Louis to catch the midnight bus. Hugs and goodbyes. I headed back. I didn't usually drive in St. Louis in the dark. I crossed a bridge. I thought, familiar? Was it? I realized I wasn't in Kansas anymore, or even St. Louis. Things were deteriorating rapidly with ditches on each side and small, shabby houses with pathway bridges to each house. Oh my God, where am I? I turned a corner that dead end into a train track, and on the track, a car is stuck. Two men are standing there. I had stopped my car, frozen. They approached my car. What do? I could have backed up quickly, except I'm still lost. And did I mention that my car was on empty? Of course it was. I rolled down the window. I'm sure they're thinking, what is this white girl doing here? I say, hey, is your car stuck? Yeah, that was a stupid question. We have to get off the tracks before the train comes. Our friend Bubba has a wrecker and he's close. Will you drive one of us there? Okay. One of them says to the other, you stay here, I'll go with her. You better hide the gun. Me, I go, you have a gun? And I literally did this. Shame on you. Oh, yes, I did. One guy gets in the car and we start driving. I say, I'm on empty and I have no money. No problem, I'll put gas in your car. I find a station and he puts $3 in 1971 of gas in my car. Yeah. He wants to chat. Where am I from? Where do I work? I say Six Flags over Mid-America. We're going to come see you. Oh, that's nice. Finally, we pull up to Bubba's shack. My passenger gets out and knocks on the door. Big old Bubba opens the door, pulling up his overall straps. After a minute, we're off with Bubba following us. We arrive, the car is hooked up, and the car is saved. Literally 30 seconds later, a train comes, and it is now 2 a.m. in the morning. I explain to them how I'm lost, and Bubba says, follow me, I'll get you turned around. At the bridge I had originally crossed, I pulled beside Bubba to say thanks, and he asked, hey, you want to go get a beer? No, I better get home. Yeah, I bet your husband's worried about you. Oh, yeah, I bet he is. He probably is. The next day, I'm at the park, Six Flags, retelling the story. Mouths fall open. You should be dead. You were in East St. Louis, the murder capital of the world. But yet, there I was, because one guy bought me gas and another headed me towards home. One last thing. The grand opening of the park was June the 5th, 1971, 53 years ago today. Thank you.
She's my adventuresome friend. Thanks so much to Brews, to John, and all the staff here. Our next show will be Wednesday, August 7th, and it will be a very special show. And we're calling this series the Front Porch Evenings. We started this series last year without a name for it, and we had Ozark folk writer Meredith Cisco as our guest. This year, we're very thrilled. Our guest storyteller will be Harry Z. Thomason, Arkansas native, director and producer of Designing Women, Evening Shade, Hearts of Fire, The Blue and the Gray, original Fall Guy, and many other TV shows and movies. Harry has written a book of stories called Brother Dog, Southern Tales and Hollywood Adventures. And so we're going to have a book signing also. You can purchase one. And our musical guest is going to be a frequent visitor here and a favorite, Ozark singer-songwriter Mick Bird. And I'll just add on that Harry, keep in mind this, we are in Arkansas. Harry is DZ's first cousin. But I have a claim to Harry, and I started claiming it when he became famous. I'm his third cousin by marriage, ex. So please join us.
And I'm 6 degrees of separation. I really do appreciate you all being here tonight. And thank you again to Brews. Thank you to Sandra, DZ, and John. Wonderful stories they told. Thanks again. Until next time.
You've been listening to Homegrown Tales, a live storytelling event held at Brews, Two Pinted Spring in Eureka Springs. Join us again next time for more Homegrown Tales.